Hi, and welcome to another episode of Piano TV. So today we are going to explore some highly unusual time signatures that you might come across in your musical journey. This includes things like 12/8 and 9/8, or other time signatures that are even weirder, like 5/8 or 7/8. We're going to talk about how to approach these, how to feel them out, and how to count them. This is actually a continuation of a video that I did a while back, which was how to count and feel out strong and weak beats in simple time signatures like 3/4 and 4/4. So if you missed that one, definitely check it out, because I view it as kind of a precursor to today's video. So today we are going to look at how to count in these unusual time signatures. We're going to figure out where the strong and weak beats go in these time signatures, and we are going to listen to a musical example to demonstrate them. So let's get started. There are some super weird time signatures out there, like mixed time signatures when you have like two different time signatures beside each other and they imply what's going on in bar one and then bar two forever and ever. That's not as weird. Something that you really won't see unless you're playing some super obscure music is irrational time signatures, which is basically anything where the bottom number isn't an 8, a 4, a 16, or, you know, multiples like that, or 32, like in this case, 5, 6, like... I don't even want to think about that. So we're not going to be looking at the extremely weird time signatures today, just like the sort of weird ones. In the previous video, we talked about simple time signatures, which that's basically what you're going to see in 95% of music. It's stuff like 4/4 and 3/4, and we also discussed one that is considered compound time, which is 6/8. The reason I included it in the last video, even though it's not technically simple time, is because it's still really common. You're going to see it a lot. So we're not going to talk about that one today. Today we're going to be looking at the less common examples of compound time, such as 9/8 and 12/8. And we're also going to be looking at complex time signatures like 5/4 or 7/4. And we're also going to do 5/8 and 7/8 as well. These time signatures are super strange when you first try them out, and they do take some getting used to, but they're kind of cool. They're fun. Okay, so first up is 9/8. 9/8 isn't a really unusual time signature, and it's pretty easy to understand and feel because it's fairly similar to 6/8. So what we have to do when we figure this out, as with any time signature, is we got to look at the bottom number, because the bottom number always tells us what type of beats. So it's basically saying eighth notes, our beat that we count are eighth notes. And what that top number tells us is how many eighth beats there are. So 9/8 basically means there's going to be 9 eighth note beats per bar. And since this is compound meter, it basically means that instead of dividing our eighth note into twos, we have to divide our eighth notes into groups of 3. And if you can do basic math, you can figure out that if you have 9 eighth notes, divide that by 3 and you get 3 groups of 3. So another way to look at it is each one of these groups of 3 is equivalent to a dotted quarter note, which is the hallmark of compound time. So I just want to show you an example of how you would count in compound time or 9/8 time, just to review, because we haven't talked about stuff like this in a while. So here's our first group of 3 beats, here's our second group of 3 beats, and here's our third group of 3 beats. This is very, very easy to count. So this is beat 1, this is beat 4, and this is beat 7. 8, 9, 4, 5, 6. And then by process of elimination, you can see that, okay, 2/16 notes, that's going to be our second beat. And then this is right over here going to be our third beat. So if I don't know if this is going to sound right, I'm going to tap the laptop and we'll see what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's how you'd count it. A famous Baroque example of 9/8 time is Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring by Bach, which I'm pretty sure you'll probably know. There is a constant flow of eighth notes that you can see in the violin 1, and you can see that it's divided into 3 groups of 3, just like we were looking at, because that's just the way 9/8 flows. So we're going to take a listen to how it sounds, and the recording I'm going to show you is piano solo. So, I mean, the sheet music that you have up on the screen is going to be a little bit different, but it gets the point across. 12/8 is another compound time signature, which means we're going to be grouping it into 3s. So this eighth note beat in 12/8 is now going to be divided into 4 groups of 3, because 3 times 4 equals 12. So here is just a picture of how that grouping would work. This is your first 3 beats, this is your second 3 beats, and then 1, 2, 3, your next group of 3 beats, and then 1, 2, 3. You can kind of see how there's that natural group of 4. Very similar to 9/8 time, except that, you know, you add an extra 3 beats to it. Actually, because of that extra 3 beats, I feel like it sounds an awful lot like 6/8 time. It's kind of like, you know, if you had 6 plus 6 and equal 12. We didn't talk about this with 9/8, but the point is really similar. When you're doing strong and weak beats, I'm just going to write the counts in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Those are our beat groupings. So it's pretty easy to figure out where the strongest beat of the count is going to be. It's always going to land on beat number 1. This is the same with 9/8 time too. I'm just going to actually write the time signature over here. It's getting kind of cluttered, but hopefully you're bearing with me. And then the start of each subsequent group is going to be like a medium beat. So strong, weak, weak, medium, weak, weak, medium, weak, weak, medium, weak, weak. So hopefully that gives you the sense of how it goes. So 12/8 time can be found a lot of the times in jigs, like the Irish Washerwoman da 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 da. That's a famous 12/8 one. And there is also some slow blues music that uses this time signature as well. But we're gonna look at something by Beethoven. We're gonna look at his 6th Symphony, which is also nicknamed the Pastoral Symphony. And in the second movement, you'll see that he uses 12/8 time. So when you listen through this, try to hear it in groups of 3. You can see that the string instruments are divided into even groups of 3 throughout the whole thing. And you'll hear that there's a heavier emphasis on beat 1, but not necessarily any of the other beats. So 5/4 or 5/8, aka quintuple meter, is probably the most common of the complex time signatures. It's still unusual. You're probably not going to come across it very much, but it is a little bit more common than 7, I think. At least that's what my experience has been in piano. So there's 2 ways that the strong and weak beats can be divided in 5/8. It really just depends on the song. Although the top one, strong, weak, weak, medium, weak, is probably the more common of the 2. Counting in 5/4 and 5/8 is pretty easy. I mean, it's really just like counting in 4/4, except you add an extra beat. So here's a really tiny piano excerpt up top that you can see the division of beats. So this would be your strong beat, this would be a weak, this would be a weak, and this would be medium, and this would be weak. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the reason I know this one is the medium beat, beat 4, not beat 3, is because this is where your chord change happens. And whenever you have chord changes in music, generally that gives it a more accented sound. Now let's take a look at this bottom one where the rhythm grouping is again very clearly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So strong, weak, weak, medium, weak. And the only difference is that this one is in 5/8 as opposed to 5/4. But you can see here's your first 3 beats, there's your next 2. Here's your first 3, there's your next 2. A good example of a modern symphony, like turn of the 20th century, in 5/4 is by Tchaikovsky. It's the second movement from his 6th Symphony, nicknamed the Limping Waltz, because that's the sort of sound that 5/4 time can have. It almost sounds like it's gonna make it to that 6th beat, which would complete the waltz pattern, but since it cuts off at beat 5 and then cycles back again to beat 1, it ends up with this like limping sound, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It's really cool. Finally, we have septuple meter, or a meter where there are 7 beats per bar. These are rare enough that you might only come across them a few times, but it's still a good one to know. Like, they're not that, like, so rare that you'll never see them unless you're a crazy music nerd. You will probably come across them. This was a rare time signature in classical European music before the 20th century, but it can sometimes be observed in folk music or Eastern music, and every now and then you had those forward-thinking composers who would use this time signature. Anyway, you have a couple options, just like 5/4, for strong and weak beat placement in septuple time. You have 2-2-3, so 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 3, or you can go 1-2, 3, 1-2, 1-2. All right, so I would say again, like the first one I've got here, 2, 2, and 3 is the more common of the groupings. So counting in 2, 2, 3 would look like this. Your strong beat would be on beat 1 as always, and then medium beats would be on beat 3 and then beat 5. And you can see 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Or you can count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And here's what the other pattern, this is in 7/8 instead of 7/4, but it's the same idea. Grouped in 3, 2, 2, and then you could count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, or you could count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. With this being your strong beat, and these starting notes here, what is that? 4th and the 6th would be your medium beats. There are some pieces that are entirely in 7, such as Charles Alkin's Impromptu Opus 32 number 8, and Brahms had some variations, but they're not common enough pieces that I was able to find a good recording for you to show. So what I did instead was pick a trio by Brahms. It's his trio number 3 for piano, violin, and cello. And it's opus, that's a page number, sorry, it's opus 101. So the first part of this trio is in 7/4. I don't know, this is really small. I don't know if you can, oh, here's a bigger one that you can kind of see. Except he wrote it like 3/4 and 2/4. So I'm gonna add like another 2/4 there because that's how you would visualize this. The first bar gets 3 beats, the second bar gets 2 beats, and then the third bar gets 2 beats. And then that cycles again and again and again throughout this section. And because of that, you can see what strong and weak beat division he meant to achieve. So we're starting with our strong beat. We're going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So we're going in 3 and then 2 and then 2 for this trio. The nice thing about this piece when you're listening to it to analyze this is that it moves slowly enough and steadily enough that it's fairly easy to follow while counting the beat. Brahms does this so well that even though it's a really weird and unfamiliar rhythm, if you're not looking for it, I think it flows just as seamlessly as 4/4. Anyway, see if you can pick this out. And that is all for today's video. I hope you learned something new or like deepened your understanding of some of these unusual time signatures. If you come across these in your music or you want to write in these time signatures, don't shy away from them because they're loads of fun. And as you can see, there's lots of great music written in them as well. Anyway, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next video. And finally, we have